Dead Island is one of the most frustrating experiences in recent memory. There are some major design flaws and tons of technical difficulties, but I can't seem to drop this game entirely, and to this date I've played through the whole game about 4 times. Now, I can't recommend this game unless you're going to be playing it with friends or just have morbid curiosity of the origins of Dying Light. What I can tell you is that if you plan to go on solo, then this can be one of the most confusing, frustrating, and awkward experiences with a game you may ever experience. With this all having been said, let's get into the specifics of why I think this way. Most of the gameplay footage is from the vanilla Xbox 360 version, and as you can see, it's not that bad and it holds up decently well to today's standards. Unfortunately, there is a serious pop-in problem, so it only looks this good after standing in place for a few seconds. Without the extra time, everything looks like a muddy mess. I find it's most noticeable in Chapter 2. The city is much grayer and features a lot more brown compared to the brighter colors of the resort in the jungle. The audio work can also be a mess. Voices don't really sync up to mouths in cutscenes.
There are so many corpses, look at them, and they're starting to decompose. Oh, they need to be buried, but I can't bury this many bodies with my bare hands.
And often during gameplay, sound effects aren't played at all, which can lead to confusing and frustrating situations. The actual sound effect quality itself is actually pretty good, and the soundtrack in particular can hit some pretty emotionally charged pieces. The voice acting is probably the most variable thing though. It ranges from good to laughably bad.
This baby needs some new spark plugs or she ain't going nowhere. Shame though, it's a hell of a car. A battalion of those freaks wouldn't slow this baby down.
The supporting cast is usually pretty good, but the main characters are pretty crap in any of their cutscenes outside of gameplay. Speaking of the main characters, Dead Island's story is all over the place, and suffers from a real identity crisis. Based off the original trailer, you would imagine Dead Island is a sad and emotionally charged game, and at times it very much is.
Jesus Christ! What else could I do? Let him kill me? Why are you looking at me like that?
Dead Island also deserves full credit for its ability to capture the horror of zombies. Twice the game establishes safe zones, then takes it away and lets the player explore the chaos of what just took place. But unfortunately, all this is thrown away when the game takes a B-movie approach to the rest of it, often putting comedy in unexpected areas. At one point, Dead Island even tackles the subject of rape and does it incredibly poorly. It was quite tasteless. Individual quests themselves are quite simple on a story aspect, usually involving someone who needs an item to save another person's life, needing to fix the safe haven that they're currently living at, or needs to either help an individual or kill a family member that's been infected. Dead Island's gameplay is split into 3 sections. First, there is the pretty meaty combat. If there was any reason to play Dead Island, it would be this. Bones can be broken, limbs can be chopped off, zombies can be knocked around, and every swing actually has some weight to it. There's a stamina bar on zombies, and once knocking that stamina bar down, the zombies will fall to the ground where they're really vulnerable. There's a fun footsie game involving killing these knockdown zombies and avoiding the ones that are still charging after you. Probably the best part of this game is when you have to juggle 3 to 4 zombies at once, and there are usually stragglers that will hear the commotion of the fight and join in after you've taken out 2 or 3. While the melee combat is very well designed, it is unfortunately thrown away about 50% through the game due to the inclusion of guns. If you play as Perna, the gun specialist, then this is great since you have tons of gun perks. But for the rest of the cast, this pins you into a playstyle that doesn't really fit your skills or perks. And unfortunately, using guns is the only way to effectively deal with human survivors too. Your jacked up melee weapon will kill someone in about 1 to 2 hits. but you're literally bringing a knife to a gunfight. So while you're busy running at someone to swipe their head clean off, you're also being pelted with tons of bullets that will drop you real quick. And Techland didn't go easy on the spawn numbers either. The smallest group of these survivors you'll ever find is 3, and in specific story missions, you'll easily have to fight off about 20 to 30 of them. Dead Island then becomes an FPS, and a very poor one at that, since the shooting controls are unbelievably basic. When shot in the head, humans drop quickly, and it is quite satisfying, but zombies are a different story entirely. Besides the shotgun and revolver, there is very little feedback when shooting zombies. Revolvers will stun them for a second, but it's never enough to hold back a whole pack. Pistols and rifles deal more damage, but the zombies don't even flinch. Just look at this. And the shotgun is so slow, it's wildly ineffective at dealing with any number of zombies. Of course, if you're using Perna, then these problems are mitigated, but for the rest of the cast, it doesn't have a great time with the guns. Section 2 of the gameplay would be the loot and upgrade system. If you haven't noticed the large numbers on screen, then I'm sorry, but they're very important. Zombies do have life totals, and weaker weapons will take extra swings to kill them. Now, this isn't a problem for Chapter 1. Random weapons on the floor will get the job done, especially since you aren't dealing with too many zombies at once. But Chapter 2 highlights the odd choice and all its problems. Picking up a random weapon will take about 5 to 6 swings to kill a single zombie. Unfortunately, you are usually fighting a minimum of 6 zombies at once. This means A, you will be overwhelmed since it's taking too long to take them out, and B, your new weapon is broken already after one encounter because you've taken too many swings when killing the zombies. To solve this problem, you can upgrade your weapons. Now, this not only deals more damage, but allows you to apply weapon mods. These mods can cause static effects, like shock, burning, toxic, and it can make chopping and breaking limbs far easier. But these mods and upgrades cost a lot of resources, and while they help the problem, they will either eventually break or become outdated since zombies scale and level with the player. Techland tried to fix this problem by adding a head stomp feature. This makes zombies become a breeze when in smaller packs. But hordes are still a massive problem, especially in single player, but more on that later. Dead Island's last gameplay section is the quest and leveling system. The player can level up, unlock passives like bonus damage with single-handed weapons, and can unlock active combat skills like your Fury attack. The leveling helps keep the player interested with slow amounts of progress, but the quests really aren't doing much besides being boring. If you enjoy MMO fetch quests, well then do I have some great news for you. Pretty much the whole game revolves around the player going from safe haven to safe haven, helping people out by getting them supplies, turning on something like an electrical grid, or clearing out a zone for survivors to move into safely. There are occasional random quests around the normal environment, but they disappear after Chapter 2 almost entirely. The main story missions are usually attached to these side quests, so you'll never get a break from the mundane fetch side of things. On a quick rant, I want to talk about Escort Missions. I've never really had a problem with Escort Missions. Hell, I even have the Saint achievement from the original Dead Rising. But Dead Island is a special kind of bad. Now, like most of the game, Chapter 1 isn't all that bad for escorting. Survivors can fend for themselves decently, but they do tend to run headfirst into zombies. The problems start to arise when the player level gets higher, but the survivor damage output remains the same for the whole game. The player's throwing about 500 damage a swing, while survivors throw about 60 to 100 if you're lucky. The escortees won't wait for you and they'll get themselves killed, which prompts a mission failure screen and will put the player back to the start of the escort mission. The real problem is that the weapon durabilities don't reset, and any bullets or medkits used are now gone forever. So if you fail an escort, you lose everything and don't get anything back in return, and since these survivors have low health, deal low damage, and are running headfirst into much stronger zombies, it's a real problem. So what I've described for the game so far might not seem that bad. Like, sure, there are some odd decisions made here and there, but there's a good and addictive gameplay loop here. The loot and level up systems are also a good way to keep the player interested with small drips of progress. Let me go over some of the large amount of technical problems to give you an idea of what I and many other players have experienced with Dead Island. I'm going to be splitting these issues into two sections: technical and pacing problems. On the technical side of things, this might be one of the most broken games I've ever played.
Good.
Dialogue can be an absolute mess with lines being awkwardly cut off. Cutscenes have some of the worst animations I've ever seen, and simple things like weapons and zombies being stuck on the ground and walls are quite common. But what's most infuriating are small details that I and many other people easily noticed. Things like Sam B's shoulders clip through the door when performing a shoulder bash, which happens a lot. Some sewer doors straight up lead you to the incorrect exits. This means you can enter into the sewer and leave the exact same exit and end up on a completely different side of the city. And last but not least, there are a myriad of bad animations. Even having only played this game solo, I was still able to find these horrible animations through your shadow. I want you to understand that I'm barely scratching the surface of the problem. If you really want to see it firsthand, just go on YouTube and look up a compilation of all the glitches and fails. But probably my largest problem with Dead Island is its pacing. Chapter 1 is fantastic. There are clear difficulty spikes and weapons actually compete with the zombies, but Chapter 2 throws far too many zombies for a solo player. I would imagine in co-op it is a bit simpler, but Techland should be able to understand that you shouldn't tone things down, especially if there's only going to be one person. Chapter 3 is a mess when it comes to gunfights. There are far too many human enemies, and pretty much all the main story missions involve fighting humans. It's quite clear that Techland didn't spend as much time on the gunplay than it did with the melee combat, so it's a real detriment to the game. The game's finale is decently paced, but I hope you're ready for multiple battles over and over again, and if you're not abusing duplication glitches, then you're going to have a rough time as a solo player. There are plenty of glitches to duplicate weapons, and if you plan on playing solo, I recommend you abusing them. Dead Island is almost impossible to beat without them. Now, if you haven't noticed, I had this rather long clip playing, and this is because I wanted to make sure you understood the pain of a solo player. All I was trying to do was cross the freaking street in Chapter 2, but just look at the sheer amount of zombies that have been hounding me the whole time. One of my weapons is already pretty much broken. This is the weapon that I literally just picked up, so this duplication glitch is almost needed to get past this section of the game. I believe Dead Island is a pretty clear-cut example of developers trying something new. While I don't agree with the special loot kind of things, I can't deny the fact that it kept me playing. If you don't know much about Techland, then I want you to know that they did end up making another very similar zombie game to Dead Island called Dying Light. It was a huge success, and it focuses mostly on the positives of Dead Island, that being the fast parkour, the meaty combat of the zombies. It takes a serious tone and doesn't do the whole B-movie schlock thing like it did in Dead Island. Now, if you're just morbidly curious, then give it a shot, but I don't recommend this to anybody who's looking at this never having played it. But Dead Island will also hold a special place in my heart that I have to visit about once every 2 years, because for some reason I get the itch to fight more zombies. Thank you for watching, and I hope you've enjoyed this video.